Welcome, and we'll start, of course, with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. And here we are. I know this is a disturbing story. It really is. And it's just, as I said, it is a necessary story because the brothers are going to be Joseph, unknown to them, is going to refer to it. I mean, this is not the kind of stuff that wouldn't have been known by the entire area, the region. I mean, this is just shocking stuff. If there were newspapers, it would have made the headlines, no question about it. But I want to make one comment. Well, before I do, let me just go on. All right. So right now, Hamor and Shem, his son, have basically said to Jacob and his sons, join us, etc., and we'll intermarry, we'll become one people, etc. Things are going to be fine. And the sons say, but they say it well. Rashi translates it mirma as shrewdly, I guess, with wisdom, he says, on the other, which if it weren't for what's going to happen, might be, mirma can also mean deceitfully. And we'll see that there was definitely some deceit involved. And it's quite possible, as I'm reflecting on the use of that word, that the Torah intends to be ambiguous. And that were it not, as you will see, for Shimon and Levi, it could have been that they were wise in the sense of saying that this is something that the Brit Milah, was the very first commandment given to Abraham after he was told to leave his father's house. And his name was changed to Abraham. And of course, the word Brit itself means a covenant, and it's a covenant of the flesh involving circumcision, and just how fundamental that is as a right, and a commandment. So, going on, the brothers are saying to Shem and Hamor, "V'im lo tishma'u eleinu lehimo," but if you don't listen to us to circumcise yourselves, v'lakachnu et bitenu v'halachnu, we will take our daughter and go, right? Or our daughters and go. There's no yud here, so it could be our daughter. So let's see if there's any Rashi on this. I think we are actually, I don't think so. All right. Yeah. Onwards. Vayitvu divrehem be'enei Hamor. And their words were pleasing in the eyes of Hamor, uve'enei Shem, and in the eyes and in the sight of Shem ben Hamor, the son of Hamor. So going on. So surprisingly enough, he was so smitten by Dinah, he was willing to do this. Now, it's possible that the whole of history would have been different had the following not taken place just in a little bit. We're not quite ready yet, but we'll see. V'lo echar hanar la'asot hadavar, and the lad did not delay to perform this thing. He chafetz bevat Yaakov. He so desired Jacob's daughter. V'hu nichbad, and he was honored mikol beit aviv, from above all his father's house. So he was very much esteemed by the entire group of Shechemites. Vayavo, I just want to make sure I'm not leaving out Rashi's here. Okay, not until 21. Vayavo Hamor uShem b'no el shar Iram. And Hamor and Shem, his son, came to the gate of their city. And we know, of course, that it's like the court, right? The courthouse. Vayidabru el anshe Iram lemor. And they spoke to the men of their city with the following words. As Dr. Barmesh likes to say, quote, Ha'anashim ha'ele, these people, shleimim he, they are wholehearted, itanu, with us. Safaria translates shleimim as friends. V'yeshvu ba'aretz, they will let them, or they let them dwell, or they will dwell in the land. V'yisacharu oto, and they will trade in it. Va'aretz hine rechavat yadayim lifnehem, and look, the land. This is the hine, right? Look, see, the land is ample before them. We've got plenty of room. Et benotam nikach lanu lanashim, we will take their daughters for wives. Ve'et benotenu nitan lahem, and our daughters we will give to them. And of course, we've already read the Rashi in our previous lesson, how they switched around the level of control there. So the deal really wasn't the deal that Jacob's sons had said to them. And we know that they did this because they wanted their own people to be willing to be circumcised. But again, there was some deception being practiced here. And of course, deception is a big theme within all these stories. So let's take a look here now. Right, shleimim, right? B'shalom, they come in peace. Uvelev shalem, and wholehearted. So we can trust them. Va'aretz, and the land hineva chavat yadayim. It's a quote from the verse. Ka'adam shiado rechava, and it's like a person, shiado rechava literally means whose hand is broad, but it means who has much substance, right? He feels very comfortable with all the things that he has. Vatranit, or uvatranit, and he is indulgent. Klomar, that is to say, al tafsidu klum, you will not lose out. Pragmatia, with harbe, you're not going to lose anything. You've got nothing to lose. Pragmatia harbe ba'alakan, there's going to be a lot of trade going on here. Ve'ein la konim, and there's no one to purchase it. In other words, we're going to see a supply and demand situation, lots of supply, little demand. We're going to be in great shape if we go ahead and do this deal. Going on. Ach bezot yeutu lanu ha'anashim lashevet itanu. However, there's always a however, right? In this, the people would be willing to dwell amongst us, or dwell with us. Liot la'am echad, in order to become one nation. Behimol lanu kol zachar, if every male is circumcised, ka'asher heim nimolim, just as they are circumcised. Behimol, behiyot namol, in order to be circumcised. So the idea of having a passive sense, right, to be circumcised. Miknehem kinyanam, their cattle and their possessions, v'chol behem tam, and all, again, their animals, halol lanuhem, they're going to be ours. Ach ne'oto lahem v'yeshvu itanu. However, they'll be satisfied. They will be willing. V'yeshvu itanu, and they will dwell amongst us. So, I think when it says ach ne'ota lahem, let's take a look at the Rashi here. L'davarze. In other words, only if we are willing to do this. In other words, only if we are willing to satisfy them, then they will dwell amongst us. L'davarze. In other words, only if we satisfy them regarding this matter. V'al yedechen, and through this, yeshvu itanu, then they will dwell with us. Let's find the place here. Vayishma'u el chamor ve'el Shechem bno, and they hearkened. They were willing to listen to Chamor and to Shechem his son. Kol yotzei shar iro, all those who, literally it means who went out of the gate of the city. meaning essentially everyone who was there. Vayimolo kol zachar, and they circumcised every male, kol yotzei shar iro, everyone who went out of the city, literally, or went out of the gate of the city. In other words, they accepted the legal ramifications of this, right? Everyone. Vayhi vayom hashlishi. Now here we go. It was so that on the third day, Biotam, as they were Koavim, as they were in pain, Vaikhu Shnei Bnei Yaakov, and two sons of Jacob took, that is the two sons, Shimon and Levi, Shimon and Levi, Achei Dina, the brothers of Dina, Ish Harbo, each one took his sword, Bayavo Alahir, and Betach, and they came upon the city secure, Vayahargu Kol Zachar, and they killed every male. And this, of course, is a dreadful, dreadful thing. No question about it. And sadly, of course, we see that human behavior hasn't changed all that much. So, Shnei Bnei Yaakov, that is two sons of Jacob. Jacob, of course, had 11 sons at this point. Banav Hayu, they were his sons. So Rashi's pointing out from a literary point of view, for Afal Pichen, despite the fact that they were his sons, and this is, in a sense, what the implication of this text is, that nevertheless, Nahagu Atzman, Shimon v'Levi, and nevertheless, Shimon and Levi behaved, Kisha'ar Anashim, like other people, She'inam Banav, who are not sons of Jacob. In other words, the implication being, of course, that if you are a descendant of Jacob, you have to act in a proper moral kind of way. And you cannot behave this way. To behave this way, in a way, is not to be a son of Jacob. Shelo natlu eitzah memenu, and they did not take advice from him. They didn't consult him. That's according to Bereshit Rabbah. So in that sense, they didn't act like sons. Now, they're referred to as Achei Dina. They're referred to as the brothers of Dina. Why does the text mention this? The fi shematzru atzmam aleha. That is because they devoted themselves to her. Nekru acheha. And for this reason, they are called her brothers. So we're looking at the subtleties of their behavior. I cannot help but feel, of course, that what they did was terrible, that I don't feel that the Torah is justifying what they did. And at the same time, we realize that the motivations were complex. Betach, meaning secure. Shahayu Koavim, and of course the simpler reason is that they were in agony. These people were of Shechem, having circumcised themselves, they were in absolute agony. Midrash Agada, and here there's a Midrash Agada, Petuchim Hayu, what were they secure about? What were they certain about? Al Kocho Shel Zakein. And I believe this refers to the strength of maybe Abraham. Yes, Lauren. I can't hear you.
Okay, well, mine actually says Jacob, but
Okay.
That's in parentheses.
Right. So
That's not, but why I raised my hand is that if these people were already circumcised, doesn't that mean that they had converted? And doesn't that mean that, in a sense, that these people were killing Jews?
yes, I know what you're saying. Well, there's more to simply being circumcised, right? There's also the acceptance of one ultimate divine creator. So I think it's a really interesting point you're raising, and I think I would say, at least from that point of view, I mean, even if they weren't Jews, this is a terrible thing to do. I mean, to ask people to go through this, true, they were motivated selfishly, right? What convinced them to do this was deeply selfish motivations, but that's no excuse whatsoever for the behavior that took place here. So, in a way, I'm not answering your question. I'm just accepting the point as being an interesting point. I would say technically, on one level, they were. On the other hand, what was the idea? The idea of being circumcised isn't simply the act of circumcision. The idea of being circumcised is to enter the covenant of Abraham. That's not clear from this text, right? I mean, if anything, this text is saying they were doing it, they were willing to do this to themselves in order to gain something, you know, on a selfish level. I'm not in any way trying to justify what Simon and Levi did, and we'll see. They are going to pay the price. I can tell you right now that the tribe of Shimon disappears altogether. It gets absorbed into the tribe of Judah. And of course, with the Levites, it's very interesting. They don't get land amongst their brothers. But what happened, of course, was that they were loyal at the point of the golden calf. It was the one tribe that refused to participate in the sin of the golden calf. And I think there's sort of an interesting lesson here, and this could be also just a really important point that the Torah is making, is that there's always a possibility of tshuva, right? And as a tribe, they had this blot on their reputation from this particular thing. And yet for the Torah to be able to try and help us understand that we may have done something absolutely abominable, but there is some level that we can try and change and do tshuva. And it still meant that the tribe of Levi did not, by the way, did not get any holdings except for these cities. So they did not get that. And also something else you should know, and we've mentioned this, that when you look at the numbers of the tribe of Levi, you see that they're far smaller than the rest of the tribes. I mean, significantly smaller. And I feel that that's all a result of saying, you're not going to, you can avoid on some levels the consequences, but on the other hand, you can't. And to understand the implications of our behavior, that what we do has an effect on future generations. And I realize that on some levels that doesn't sound fair. On the other hand, in terms of justice, if we all have the same rules, that's basically that's a foundational point of justice, that we all play by the same rules, and also the fact that we need to recognize how responsible we are, that we can't just think we are acting for ourselves, and après moi la deluge, we just don't care what happens afterwards, to sense that responsibility. So I think there's some powerful ideas that come out of this very painful story. So thank you. So with the Zaken, right? The reason why I was wondering about Abraham is because Zaken, generally refers to an elderly, right? It literally means an elderly person. And so one thinks of a grandparent or a great grandparent. And of course, Jacob was their father, not their grandfather. So, or great grandfather. So just a thought. I mean, I think the point is the same. Let's keep going. This is not all. This is only part of it. It's the disgusting behavior continues, right? Okay. So listen to this. Ve'et Chamor, ve'et Shechem beno. Notice how they keep mentioning Hamor and Shechem, his son. So there is some significance, I believe, in terms of why they're always put that way. This has been mentioned, this little phrase, right, is mentioned a number of times. And I have to wonder, is there some deeper meaning as to why they mention this, right? Maybe the degree to which that Hamor cared for Shechem, right? Because obviously he did it on the fact that Shechem was the one who, in a sense, initiated all of this. Hagula fi Charev. So they mentioned specifically that Hamor and Shechem, his son, they killed by the sword. Vayikhu et Dinah mi beit Shechem vayetzeu. And they took Dinah out of the house of Shechem and they left. They went out. They took Dinah and they went out. Again, I want to make sure, right? So Let's keep going. Now, this is again, we are not reading pleasant stuff. Bnei Yaakov, the sons of Jacob. So the rest of the sons of Jacob, Ba'u al Hachalalim, and they came upon the victims, the slain people, right? Vayavozu ha'ir, and they sacked the city essentially. They plundered the city. Asher tim'u achotam, which had for having defiled their sister. Again, this isn't a justification. And besides which, was it the city that did this? It was Shem who did it. So again, is the Torah simply saying that in their minds they felt justified? And let's be honest about it. How do people act? Right? We know that human nature is such that one individual can do something disgusting, and people who are not part of that group or part of that family will blame the entire group. So we have examples with anti-Semitism where one Jew behaves in a disgusting way, and all of a sudden all Jews are to blame. Yes, Lauren.
Well, I mean, the name Hamor is the
Yes,
same as donkey, right?
it is. Yes.
So, I mean, maybe that's why they're saying Shechem, son of a donkey, like kind of as an insult.
It could be. It could be. It could be. To what degree a donkey is necessarily an insult? It's one of the most sure-footed animals out there, and I believe they were domesticated before horses. So, I agree with you that the question becomes, and I appreciate your trying to puzzle out that little phrase. There's no question that chamor means donkey, but
But
what
they're a subservient beast of burden. They're not a person.
right. So it could be, if we want to go with along those lines, the sense that Hamor, who is Shechem's father, was subservient to his son. And that would work, and that could be a point that it's making, that instead of realizing and trying to, get his son to see a little bit more than his passions, right? He didn't. He fully supported him. So that could be, it could be. I think it's an interesting possibility. Going on. Oh, it's okay. So we'll have to stop here. Let me make sure we do have this. Right. Okay. Let's take care of the Rashi, and that'll be it for this morning. Al hachalalim, right? On the victims. The fashet hachalalim, to strip the victims, v'chein tigem onkelos, and so because just simply means on the victims doesn't clarify, but it was to strip them. V'chein tigem onkelos, and Rashi refers to the Aramaic translation lechaltsa katilaya. So it means to strip the deceased, the people who had been killed, the people who had been slaughtered. And that's where we'll stop for today. You're hearing me sigh, I'm sure. Such sad stuff to have to deal with. Okay. So we will mark the place. I'm going to stop the share. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.